Hello, everybody. We are back. No, your eyes do not deceive you. Yes, I am, in fact, back. And I may be distorting the mic a little bit. It's been a while since I've been here, so I don't know. I'm trying to rearrange everything in the perfect place so that it all comes together the way that it needs to. Yes, let's address the elephant in the room. I have been gone for what seems like an eternity to everyone, and if anyone's still subscribed to this channel at this point, I I maybe this is just going to be like a huge surprise. It's going to pop right up in your algorithm and be like, oh my goodness, that person has not been posting since the time of Abraham Lincoln, which pretty accurate. I mean, we took a hiatus, then we came back, then we took another hiatus, and it's probably been a year at this point. And there was many good reasons for that. I've been busy, really busy, doing a lot of things in my personal life. Let's just share a little secret with everybody here. Just developed a TV show, which is going to be fantastic, called Badlands. It's a Western show. So I was the showrunner for that. I currently am the showrunner for that. So a lot of that stuff just massively took up my time. Also, the church that I am the worship pastor at, which many of you know, I'm a worship pastor. And I run this channel on the side. Well, I haven't really run it much in the last bit, but I'm happy to be back with you today, getting back to what we all grew to love those many years ago when I was posting things. I'm taking this hiatus. Hopefully I've gotten, a little more knowledge packed into my skull from, all of the, all the comments that some people would make that I didn't know what I was talking about, which I still don't. So I'm going to give my opinion. I am a senior member of Gen Z, if you believe that Gen Z starts at the 2000s, which I obviously do believe that. So, I'm not an ultra old person, nor am I all that experienced in wisdom, but I give my opinion on things. And I'm not always right, and that's perfectly fine. If you want to disagree with me, we welcome it. The comment section beneath, go ahead. Explain how you disagree with me. Explain maybe what I'm missing. Oh, goodness, what am I doing? First, let's start off with what we're actually doing here today, all right? We're back into the debate reactions. Today, I'm reacting to an oldie but a goodie. William Lane Craig versus Christopher Hitchens, and the topic that they are doing is on the existence of God. Does God exist? So, very broad topic. I think we've covered this once or twice before. I have some things that I'm going to be saying in this. We're going to get into the cross-examination period, which is only about 13 minutes, so they did a really, really brief cross-ex. So we should be able to accomplish all of it. See what Craig's saying, see what Hitchens is saying. And as always, if you want to respond to something that I either missed, I'm not seeing properly, whether you agree, disagree, whatever belief system that you come from, feel free to put that into a comment, and I will do my best. Most all of them I see. I do my best to respond to them if they're respectful. Now, if they are not respectful, if you are being a jerk, if you're being a troll, if you're not arguing in good faith, if you're not adding to the conversation, right out of there, buddy. I don't care at all. This is not a free speech platform in the comment section, so I'm not going to let people spew division and attack one another or unfairly do things that you wouldn't have the guts to do if you were there in person. So be nice about it. Don't make me remove your comment, because I will, and I love removing people's comments, especially the ones that are really nasty, that they put together a whole book, and you're like, you wasted 35 minutes of your time for me to just blip that from existence. So if you don't want that to happen, just be respectful and present a good perspective, because we all can learn, whether you're coming here as a Christian, as an atheist, as a theist, just who believes, in God in general, as an agnostic. Maybe you're coming into this as an ultra-fundamentalist. Maybe you're coming into this, and you believe in God but don't agree with William Lane Craig. Or you're an atheist and don't like Christopher Hitchens. There's a diversity and array of opinions that everybody has, and especially in Gen Z, which is where we try to connect the most with. I find that in the age of the internet, everybody has different belief systems on different things, and they're not as uniform as they used to be. So we're going to do our best to evaluate what's going on here. Now, bias is on the table. I'm a worship pastor. I'm a Christian. I'm a theist. But I'm probably a lot different than most theists that you know. I stay as open-minded as I can be, and I don't mind having my mind changed on things And I will tend to come down where William Lane Craig is at on this debate, but I don't always agree with William Lane Craig on a lot of things. I'll cite right now things I don't agree, and some of you know if you've watched this channel. I think his views on divine command theory are not good. I actually think they're kind of ridiculous. I think a lot of his views really just on the nature of God, not good. So there's a lot to be said about what I disagree with William Lane Craig on. There's a lot to be said of what I agree with him on. I mean, as many other people, he's an instrumental part of me taking some steps into really learning my faith and all that stuff. Hitchens, I got to be perfectly honest, not a fan of. Mainly from this point, I'm not a fan of the new atheist movement, the four horsemen of the atheists, Harris, Dennett, Hitchens, and Dawkins. Mainly because, and hear me out here, like if you love Hitchens and you're an atheist, I'm not trying to knock you. I think that there are really, really smart atheists out there. I'd cite people like Graham Oppie. I'd cite Alex O'Connor. Really good old atheistic philosophers as well. And there's people who just don't have any good recognition that you don't ever hear the names of that actually are getting to the meat of the matter, talking about real serious arguments, real serious things to bring up on the existence of God, on people's interpretations of God. And I have great friends who I consider to be intellectually minded, to the supreme, who are atheist thinkers. And I feel like the demagoguery of a lot of the horsemen of the atheist, the new atheist movement, I feel like they don't address issues, and I feel like it gives atheism a bad name. And I'm just not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of wasting time on rhetorical devices that are funny for the crowd to laugh at and don't help us get any closer to actually good arguments. I'm not a fan of recycling old arguments and putting, a laugh track to them. I'm bored by it, and I think that it intellectually lowers us. The same way I don't like Christian apologists who argue third-rate arguments that have been debunked before. So, not a big fan of Hitchens, but I'll keep my mind open to this. Let's get into Cross-X. Enough of that, and obviously you know that I will pause when I have something to say. Let's see what happens here.
All right. Let's talk first about whether there are any good arguments to think that atheism is true. Now, it seems to me that you're rather ambivalent here, that you say, you redefine atheism to mean a sort of atheism or non-theism.
That's what it means.
But how do you distinguish then the different varieties of non-theism? For example, what is normally called atheism, agnosticism, or the view of verificationists that the statement God exists is simply meaningless?
Well, there are different schools of atheism, as you say, but there's no claim I know how to make that says atheism is true, because atheism is the statement that a certain proposition isn't true. So I wish you'd get this bit right, because there you go again.
Well,
I just devoted a little time to this. I said it is not in itself a belief or a system. It simply says you can get by better, probably, we think, without the assumption, and that no one who wants you to worship a god has ever been able to come up with a good enough reason to make you do it.
Now,
okay. Before Craig adds clarification, let's jump into that, because this is going to get right to the heart of what I don't like about Christopher Hitchens, or really about any of the new atheists in general, is because that seems to really miss the point. Alex O'Connor will concede the point normally, and that is, Graham Oppie's, how about this? Graham Oppie's a good example of this. Graham Oppie, who I think is a brilliant atheist philosopher, says basically this: atheists need to make arguments too. Yeah, he doesn't use kind of the bait and switch like it's just an anti-belief system. He mainly says, look, take it from this perspective. We all pop into existence on a world. How did the world get here? We don't know. Nobody has seen how the world got into existence. We look above us, we see stars, and we see the galaxies, and all this stuff. All this stuff predates us. We have no clue how we got here, what made it, if it was made, if it was eternal, all that stuff. We don't know the answers to those questions. But what we do know, at least the best that we can say we know, and there's arguments on this as well, is that we're here And this world is here. How did we get here is the question. Now, somebody may propose, well, a God, God, there's something that, some force that acted on the world and created all this stuff from nothing. Okay, and God did that. And someone else may say, no, that's not the case. It just all has existed here. Those are independent claims. Now, the guy who says this has all just existed is tacitly rejecting the idea that God exists. And yet he's making a claim. So the atheist is making a claim about the world. When he says there is no God, he is saying that all of this material world came from something that wasn't God. But he's proposing some sort of alternative to the idea that it all came from God. So there needs to be some level of argumentation added to that. I appreciate there's two sides of an argument. There's tearing down one side and there's building a case for your own side, but I don't know if there's ever much building a case for your own side on this. And also, I don't think that he helps with his distinction on atheism and agnosticism and evidentialism all being wrapped into one umbrella term of atheism. I think that does a disservice to the nuances of people who are agnostics and don't want to identify with saying there is no God. They just want to identify with saying, I'm not sure.
Though, that on your definition of atheism or non-theism, it really embodies a diversity of views, such as agnosticism, what is normally called atheism, or this verificationism. Now, which of those do you hold to within this umbrella of atheism? Are you an atheist who asserts the proposition God does not exist, or do you simply withhold belief in God in the way the agnostic does?
Right. On some days, I'm a greater. No, I'm not going to do you that much of a favor. On some days, I'm a great admirer of Thomas Huxley, who had the great debate with Bishop Wilberforce in Oxford at the Natural History Museum about Darwinism in the mid 19th century, who was known as Darwin's bulldog. We would now say Darwin's pit bull, and who completely trounced the good bishop. But I can't thank him for inventing the term agnostic. And I can't thank him for some of his social Darwinist positions either, some of which are rather
unattractive. I need an answer to this. My time is fleeting.
But because I think agnosticism is evasive. To me, yes, if you talk about the power of the Holy Spirit and so forth, to me that is meaningless. It's to me, I'm sorry, I've tried. It's white noise. It's like saying there is only one God and Allah is his messenger. It's gibberish to me. There are many of us. I'm sorry, there are just many of us of whom this is the case. It may be true. It is true.
Okay, Mr. Hitchens, I got to press you here because time is fleeting.
Feel free.
What is your view exactly?
Press away.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to stop it here again because I don't know what we're getting at as part of what it's like. This is kind of my frustration. Like we had a whole diatribe, and again, they only get like 7 minutes, which is a ridiculous amount of time on cross-ex. I wish they'd stop that. Cross-examination is the best part of the debate. Stop giving them like 2 hours to give their speech, 30 minutes to give a responding speech, and you give like 7 minutes to cross-ex. It's annoying. Cross-ex is the best. Give us 10 minutes maybe to set up our arguments, and then give us an hour of cross-ex. It's way better that way. But I mean, again, it's very rhetorical going into a diatribe about C. Thomas Huxley, who, by the way, I would agree, did actually did he trounce the good bishop? I don't know enough about that debate, but I do know that Huxley, the majority said that he won that debate. Then again, side note, I mean, William Wilberforce is the guy who ended slavery, so I mean, if we're comparing the accomplishments of the two men in their lifetime, C. Thomas Huxley is there, and William Wilberforce is like way on the top of stuff. But again, it's very we're avoiding clash successfully. Clash is trying to happen. That's when the two interlocutors actually get to something meaningful. Clash is trying to happen, but Hitchens is always one step ahead of it because I don't think he has any interest in really being serious about debating a topic.
Do you affirm God does not exist, or do you simply withhold belief?
Once I have said that I've never seen any persuasive evidence for the existence of something, and I've made real attempts to study the evidence presented and the arguments presented, that I will go as far as to say, have the nerve to say, that it does not therefore exist, except in the minds of its, except in the Henry Jamesian subjective sense that you say of it being so real to some people in their own minds that it counts as a force in the world. Yes.
Okay, so you do affirm then that God does not exist. Now, what I want to know, and do you have any justification for that?
I think I've come unwired in some horrible way.
You're fine.
Are you sure?
Do you have any arguments leading to the conclusion that God does not exist?
Well, I would rather. I think I'm wondering if I'm boring anybody now. I would rather say.
In a way, yeah. I mean, it would be a lot more interesting if there was, instead of kind of skirting around stuff, we were getting to actual conversation. But
I'd rather state it in reverse and say I find all the arguments in favor to be fallacious or unconvincing. And I'd have to add that though this isn't my reason for not believing in it, that I would be very depressed if it was true.
Okay. Okay, so here's again, let's just use a classic example of this. All right, actually, let's get a prop for it. If someone comes to me and says, hey, Zach, there's a barbecue going on outside, and I say, do you have any proof for that? And they say, yeah, I have a red Solo cup, right? Red Solo cups, means that there's drinks, and, there's drinks at barbecues, so they probably have red Solo cups up there. I may look at that and say, okay, that's not evidence that there's a barbecue outside, because they could be using the red Solo cup because, I don't know, there's a Cinco de Mayo party happening outside. They could be using it because there's, some sort of picnic going on that doesn't require any kind of barbecue. And I'm using barbecue in the southern term, not burgers and hot dogs. I'm using it as actual, barbecued meat with sauce on top of it. Or maybe he just went to the store and bought a red Solo cup, and there's nothing going on outside. So I say, hey, look, the evidence you've presented to me of a barbecue outside is insufficient for me to believe it. Does that give me the right to say that there isn't a barbecue going on outside? No, the best I can say is all of the evidence that I've seen is not sufficient to prove that there is a barbecue going on outside, is the first thing. Now, now I have to bolster my claim that there isn't. If I want to say there isn't a barbecue going outside, I need to bolster that claim, and some evidence would be like, I walked outside and didn't see one. Well, that would be some evidence. There's evidence in the column over here that says the evidence you presented isn't sufficient, and then there needs to be evidence in this column that says the evidence that I've come up with is now disproving that there is, in fact, a barbecue going on outside. So, from Hitchens' perspective on God, all he said is, all the arguments I've heard are not persuasive to me. And also I want to comment on the to me. To say that the arguments are not persuasive to me is a very useless thing to say, because since when did you become the arbiter of what is a good argument and what is not? Now, you are the arbiter subjectively, personally, to you of what's a good argument or what is not. But just because you don't find something convincing, look, I may find all of the arguments in favor of a round earth unconvincing, and I may believe in a flat earth. But that doesn't mean that the arguments aren't compelling to believe in a round earth. It just simply means that I and my personality have decided I don't find them to be compelling. But you are well within your rights to look at me and say, your perspective is idiotic. Just because you're being incredulous about believing in all of this evidence doesn't mean that we don't have good evidence for it. So, I mean, there's plenty of people in both camps, atheists who believe that their arguments are good against the existence of God, and theists who believe their arguments are good for the existence of God. And we could get to those wonderful questions if we had someone who was seriously willing to represent the atheist point of view. And that's what I would like. That's what I wish Christopher Hitchens would do. I want to see the best perspective. If two sides are arguing against one another, give me the champions of both sides. Don't just give me a court jester who can make me laugh about it. And I'm not saying that Hitchens wasn't smart. He was really smart. He was smart and crafty, and he was able to really trick a lot of people into thinking that there were good arguments that he was making because he was funny about them. And I'm not saying there aren't good arguments. There are great arguments, but he's not making any of them. And that's frustrating to me because I've heard atheists take theists to task with really good arguments, and it's disrespectful to those really intellectual atheists to promote somebody as like the champion of the atheists when anyone with kind of a mild understanding of these topics can pick this kind of stuff apart. I would feel disrespected if someone came to me as a Christian theist and said, "Hey, the greatest representative of Christian theism is Kent Hovind," and then they subsequently went to Kent Hovind's stuff and picked him apart. It's embarrassing because, of course, Kent Hovind is not the greatest representative. He's probably the worst of Christian theism. So I don't want him representing me, and I would feel offended on behalf of the atheists. I do kind of feel offended on behalf of the atheists that this is what's being represented right now, because it's not useful distinctives, and it's a regurgitation of stuff that has already been said again and again and again. And I'll use his own words. It's just not persuasive to me.
Quite different thing. I don't say of atheism that it's at all morally superior. That would be very risky. I wouldn't admit that it was at all morally inferior either, but we can at least be acquitted.
Okay, so what does that have to do with anything? And also, I mean, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? And besides that, I don't want to be the according to what standard guy, but according to what standard? Atheism isn't morally superior or morally inferior. I'm not saying that the theists don't have their own problems with, once they invoke God, they do have their own problems of, okay, well, is it good? Is it moral because God says it's moral, or is it moral, the Euthyphro dilemma, because it's just moral and God deems it to be that way? But again, a little bit of a pet peeve of mine is when atheists who have not presented a moral standard talk in moral language, because it doesn't make any sense to me. It's kind of a meaningless statement.
On the charge of wishful thinking.
I wonder if that's the case. Would you agree that the absence of evidence...
Wait, they can be acquitted on the grounds of wishful thinking. What? Okay, I'm not going to get into it because we're going to make this video too long, but what does that have to do with anything?
Is not evidence of absence.
Well, I'm not sure that I would agree.
Okay. Let's turn to the moral argument and talk about that a little bit. I think you've misunderstood
and I think
the moral argument.
I think that right there, that right there is the admission that drives me a little bit crazy. Anyone should make that. That's a sophomoric mistake to say absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. The answer to that should be yes. That just because I am not seeing the evidence doesn't mean the evidence doesn't exist. Now, don't suspend that way beyond its reaching points, but you may have only ever heard. I'll give you an example about this. This is a good example. I was raised King James only, and the King James only Bible was that the King James was the Word of God. All the other Bibles weren't good, right? So that's just how I was raised. All the evidence was always presented to me from a King James only perspective to say that the King James was the Word of God and the other translations were corrupted. I had an absence of evidence that the other translations were good, but that didn't mean that it was evidence of absence, that there weren't good evidence for the other translations being good. It just meant I wasn't personally seeing it. So again, this is another way of just taking yourself and making you the arbiter of all things. This is the problem. It doesn't matter. And this is what I find a lot of times in kind of new atheist debates is they put themselves up as, I'm not convinced. Who cares if you're not convinced? Just like if I was having a debate with an atheist and they were giving me their arguments and I said, well, that just doesn't convince me. You should care about whether it convinces me. It's not about me. I'm not the arbiter of what makes sense and what doesn't. So it doesn't matter whether you're compelled or not. What matters is, are the arguments solid? Are the arguments good? Whether they compel me or don't compel me. So, yeah.
Given the stakes, Doctor, given the stakes, we're not talking about unicorns or tooth fairies or leprechauns here. We're talking about an authority that would give other human beings the right to tell me what to do in the name of God. So for a claim like that, if there's no evidence for it, it seems to me not a small question.
No, it's certainly not a small question.
Because you're making a very, very, very large claim. Your evidence had better be absolutely magnificent, it seems to me. And it's the lack of magnificence, I think, that began to strike me first.
One final question.
Again, it doesn't matter whether it strikes you one way or not. And beyond that, again, and I would ask the atheists, am I just being, I may be being too harsh, but I would ask the atheists in good faith, is this your champion? Like, is this really what, do you support this person being the figurehead of your movement? Because I would be personally offended that this person is being held up as the figurehead of my movement. This just isn't good argumentation. And there is good argumentation. That's the worst part of it. There is really good argumentation to be brought up on Christopher Hitchens' side, and he's not doing it. I deeply respect people like Alex O'Connor. I feel like he gets right to the heart of things. He's actually getting to real clash. He's actually getting to real moral questions, serious moral questions, serious problems with theistic thought. And I don't think Hitchens is doing that at all. I think he's playing around a lot, and that's frustrating, I guess, to me. So I would just ask, I'm not trying to be overly harsh. I'm trying to explain how frustrated I am on behalf of y'all. How about that? I'm being serious. Like, the reason I'm going so hard after Hitchens is not because I'm anti-atheist. It's because I'm anti-bad arguments representing anybody. I would go hard after a Catholic who was representing Catholicism in a way that I consider to be beneath the argumentation, even though I'm not a Catholic. And I just find this to be really beneath the bar of and also, what do you consider, what evidence would you like more often than not? What would you consider magnificent evidence?
Okay, well, let's go to the moral argument. It seems to me there that you've misunderstood the argument in that we're looking for an objective foundation for the moral values and duties that we both, I think, want to affirm. It's not a matter of whether or not we can know what is right and wrong, or that we need God to tell us what is right and wrong. It's rather that we need to have some sort of an objective foundation for right and wrong. Wouldn't you agree on your view? It's simply the sociobiological spin-offs of the evolutionary process, and that therefore these do not provide any sort of objective foundation for moral values and duties.
That could be true, yes. That
Okay.
could well be true. Yeah, I don't want to be too much of a reductionist, but it's entirely possible that it is purely evolutionary and functional. One wants to think that there's a bit more to one's love for the fellow creature than that. But it doesn't add one iota of weight or moral gravity to the argument to say, but that's because I don't believe in a supernatural being. It's a non sequitur.
Mr. Hitchens, your questions for Dr.
What do you mean it doesn't add any moral gravity? He just said that it all could be biological responses. Murder could just be, there's no grounding for whether murder is right or murder is wrong. It could just be, biological responses of love and all this other stuff. We wouldn't even call it that. So what do you mean moral weight? What do you mean moral weight? If there's no grounding for morality, there isn't moral weight. You're right. It doesn't add one iota at all, because there wouldn't be any moral weight with any of those decisions. There wouldn't be moral weight to be equated with eating something as opposed to eating someone. Neither one of those would have any moral distinction. So where's the moral weight getting thrown around? And actually, it does add an iota, by the way. It adds an iota of difference, saying that there's grounding, at least in the supernatural. It doesn't end the argument by any stretch of the imagination, but it does add another level of argumentation, because his concession right there is that there is no moral significance to any of those actions. So at least the supernatural argument is trying to imbue some moral significance to it with, as we've said before on this channel, the image of God hypothesis, right? Everyone is created in the image of God. You can't harm someone created in the image of God. Again, you may not like the argument, but that's at least trying to put some moral significance onto creatures that are just bits of protoplasm, meat, and blood. In the Hitchens view, there is none. So I don't understand what the moral terms that he's arguing in are at all at this point.
Dr. Craig.
Also, and it's going back to right before it goes back to Craig. I just want to say, I'd say that there was a lot of body blows, but I don't think there were. I think there was a lot of avoidance, and we never got to the point. And there was only 7 minutes. It felt very long in 7 minutes. So I think the two real hits was Christopher Hitchens admitting that he doesn't believe that absence of evidence is evidence of absence, or that he does believe that. I think that was probably improper. And then the way that he defined atheism, kind of realizing that he had defined it incorrectly, I think those were significant. So I would put the advantage right now is on Craig, but again, it was his cross-ex time. So Hitchens has a chance to really fight back. Normally you'd expect the advantage to be on the person who is asking the questions. Rarely is it ever, on the person who's answering, but sometimes it is. But yeah, I would say there's a good advantage to Craig right now. But Hitchens could change my mind. He may be a better cross-exer, while asking the questions. So I'm expecting him to get down to some things that would be helpful. I mean, the debate is on the existence of God. So maybe hit him on how it seems at least improbable, if God exists, that evil in the forms that we see it would also exist. That could be good. Hit him on maybe divine hiddenness. That's a good argument against the existence of God. Like, if God really does exist, how come it seems like he keeps hiding himself? And like, when he could really make himself clear and plain, like, that could be a good argument that you could bring up. There's a lot of things. So you can attack back the idea that God exists. So I'm kind of hoping to see what he comes up with, and maybe he'll have enough to kind of maybe turn the tide for him. But I don't feel like he did really well against those questions.
Well, I'd like to know first, you said that the career of Jesus of Nazareth involved a ministry of miracles and exorcisms. When you say exorcism, do you mean that you believe in devils too?
What I meant there was that most historians agree that Jesus of Nazareth practiced miracle working and he practiced exorcisms. I'm not committing myself, nor are historians committing themselves to the reality of demons, but they are saying that Jesus did practice exorcism and he practiced healing.
So you believe that Jesus of Nazareth caused devils to leave the body of a madman and go into a flock of pigs that hurled themselves down the Gadarene slopes into the sea?
Do I believe that's historical? Yes.
Right. That would be sorcery, wouldn't it, though?
No, it would be an illustration of Jesus' ability to command even the forces of darkness, and therefore an illustration of the sort of divine authority that he was able to command and exercise. This, as I say, is illustrative of this unprecedented sense of divine authority that Jesus of Nazareth had, that he even could command the forces of darkness and that they would obey. So whether you think he was a genuine exorcist or that he merely believed himself to be an exorcist, what is historically undeniable is that he had this radical sense of divine authority, which he expressed by miracle working and exorcisms.
Right. And you believe he was born of a virgin?
Okay.
Yes, I believe that as a Christian.
What does this have to do at all with the topic at hand? I was going to let it go, but what a waste of time. The argument is, does God exist? It is not, is Jesus of Nazareth God, or was Jesus of Nazareth born of a virgin, or could Jesus of Nazareth exorcise demons? Like, okay, fine. Maybe the best thing that could happen, according to this line of argumentation, is Christopher Hitchens could point out inconsistencies in the Christian story and inconsistencies in what William Lane Craig believes about the Christian story, and maybe he in 7 minutes can disprove that Christianity is not actually true, and like Christianity is not a good, valid alternative of religion. That's not going to disprove the existence of God. That's a completely disrelated question. You should be attacking what's at hand, and that is, does God exist? Not, is Jesus God? Those are completely different things. I mean, he's not even attacking that. He's just bringing up things about Jesus of Nazareth because he knows that William Lane Craig is a Christian. It's just really frustrating. It misses the point. What are we having this debate about? Why are we not talking about what the debate's about? What is the point of this? If you wanted to have something on Jesus of Nazareth, then have the debate on Jesus of Nazareth. But this is a trend for Christopher Hitchens, I find. he does not prepare well for his debates. And he tries to use his wit to bail him out of situations. And a lot of times it works, like when he's debating Frank Turek, or people who aren't necessarily the most sharp in their debating fields. He kind of gets away with people thinking that he's making good points. But when he's debating someone who's actually keeping him on point, the man is completely incoherent according to a debate. He is wasting time, and when he could have made some solid hits, he's not even going after them. He's just wasting his time.
Couldn't claim to prove that historically. That's not part of my case tonight. But I as a Christian, I believe that.
And I know you believe in the resurrection, but
yes, and for that, I think that we have good evidence.
As a matter of biblical, what shall we call it, consistency, it's said in one of the Gospels that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves of Jerusalem were opened, and all the tenants of the graves walked the streets and greeted their old friends. It makes the resurrection sound rather commonplace in the greater Jerusalem area.
It says that's in the Gospel of Matthew, and that's actually attached to a crucifixion narrative.
That's what I said. It says at the time of the crucifixion.
Yes, that's right. At the time of the crucifixion, it says that there were appearances of Old Testament saints in Jerusalem at the time. This is part of Matthew's description of the crucifixion scene.
Do you believe that?
I don't know whether Matthew intends this to be apocalyptic imagery or whether he means this to be taken literally. I've not studied it in any depth, and I'm open-minded about it. I'm willing to be convinced one way or the other.
You see, the reason I'm pressing you is this because,
Dr. Craig, do you believe that Kermit the Frog exists? Dr. Craig, do you believe in the Wendy's Frosty? They're all irrelevant questions to the topic. Note the time, ladies and gentlemen, and note what the topic was. Now, he did say he was going to give the reason he was pressing these things, so I'm really curious, because maybe I spoke too soon. He's all going to wrap. He was putting together the greatest garden path in the history of garden paths, and he's going to wrap this all around, but I see no relevance in this line of questioning yet. So what is he saying it for?
we know from Scripture that the Pharaoh's magicians could produce miracles. In the end, Aaron could outproduce them. But what I'm suggesting to you is even if the laws of nature can be suspended and great miracles can be performed, it doesn't prove the truth of the doctrine of the person who's performing them. Or would you not agree to that?
Not necessarily. I think that's right.
So somebody could be casting out devils from pigs, and that wouldn't prove he was the Son of God.
I think that's right. In fact,
I don't think that William Lane Craig made one argument for Jesus's effectual miracles making him, giving him legitimacy to being called God as any of his arguments for the existence of God. Only he grounded any of them in Jesus. So again, this is a line of argument that may be really good in the context of a debate when the topic is, was Jesus God? That would be a good argument, a line of argumentation, but that's not what the topic is, and it's a waste of time. And I wish he'd get back to the actual topic.
Jewish exorcists. The only point that I was trying to make there was that this was illustrative of the kind of divine authority that Jesus claimed, especially since he didn't cast them out in God's name, or he didn't perform miracles by praying to God. He would do them in his own authority. So that Jesus exercised an authority that was simply unheard of at that time, and for which he was eventually crucified because it was thought to be blasphemous.
Well, it was thought to be blasphemous to claim to be the Messiah, to be exact. I mean, the people who got the closest look at him, the Jewish Sanhedrin, thought that his claims were not genuine. So remember, if you're resting anything on eyewitnesses, the ones who we definitely know were there thought he was bogus. But
who cares? Who cares? Also, I'm going to take umbrage with that, just for the reason, because while we're already off the road and we're never going to go back to the actual debate road, while we're deciding to off-road for the rest of our cross-examination, I might as well talk about the topic that he wants to talk about, which is not relevant to the actual topic. If I had prepared for a debate on the existence of God and I got these questions back from my interlocutor, I would be fuming. Because why did I waste my time in the first place? But let's just deal with his other debate that he wants to have over here. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Okay? He says for eyewitness testimony, the eyewitnesses we know were there. How do you know the Sanhedrin, who thought he was bogus, were actually there? Do you know it, Chris, based on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? because you don't know it based on Tacitus, because Tacitus' quotation about Jesus doesn't mention any of the Sanhedrin or the Pharisees. You don't know it based on Josephus, because Josephus, if he does in his little quotation on Jesus, barely makes reference at all to the Pharisees and what they believed about Jesus, just says that Jesus was crucified. You don't know it based on Lucian. You don't know it based on Celsus. You don't know it based on Marabar Serapion. So the only way that you know that these people thought Jesus was bogus is based on the testimony of the people that you say, the eyewitness testimony that you won't admit. So the only good eyewitness testimony is eyewitnesses written by an eyewitness that you think is bogus. So let's just have this conversation all right now, because Chris has decided that we're never going to get back on topic. So I'm happy to visit Stupid Town with everybody.
I think I've got a rough idea, assuming you make that assumption of his pre-existing divinity, that it's a presuppositionalist case. I can see what you're driving at.
Well, no, I've got
another question. I've got another question for you, which is this: how many religions in the world do you believe to be false?
I don't know how many religions in the world there are. So
well, could you name? Well, fair enough. I'll see.
That is the proper response to this entire circus of a thing. If you come up and don't treat it seriously, like, you deserve to get laughed at. Like, because Alex O'Connor wasn't old enough to be in this place at this time, but like, because Graham Oppie could have been there. Let me put it this way. This has always irked me. There was a debate that William Lane Craig had with Lawrence Krauss. Okay, Lawrence Krauss was arguing for some form of atheism. William Lane Craig was arguing for theism. And do you know who was the host of that debate? Graham Oppie. Graham Oppie was the host of that debate. Okay, the brilliant Graham Oppie. Which, by the way, man, I wanted to get him on this show, and I got so close. He actually responded back to me on, messaged me back, but we never could work out a time, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I'd love to have Graham Oppie on the program. So, Graham, if you're watching, we'd love to have you. But Graham Oppie was the host. And you know what I hated? Is I watched Lawrence Krauss make some of the worst argumentation I'd ever heard. And I'm sitting there looking at an atheist, Graham Oppie, who actually had to suffer through that. And I'm like, this should be reversed. Oppie should be the one who's sitting there, and Lawrence Krauss should be hosting this thing. And then we get real serious argumentation. And it's just... the fact that this is what we're getting is a circus to me. When there's any other atheist, there's other atheists who could have sat in that chair and done a better job. Actually could have stayed on topic.
Can't narrow that down. That was a clumsily asked question, I admit. Do you regard any of the world's religions to be false? Do you regard any of the world's religions to be false preaching?
Yes, I think, yeah, certainly.
Would you name one then?
Islam.
That's quite a lot.
Pardon me?
That's quite a lot.
One, but
Yeah.
Do you think it's moral to preach false religion?
No.
So religion is responsible for quite a lot of wickedness in the world right there.
Certainly.
Right.
I'd be happy to concede that. I would agree with that.
So if I was a baby being born in Saudi Arabia today, would you rather I was me or a Wahhabi Muslim?
Would I be? You'd rather be what?
Would you rather it was me, it was an atheist baby, or a Wahhabi baby?
I don't have any preference as to whether you would.
You do.
Well, I'm glad that while we're in Cloud Cuckoo Land, we've just decided to just, yeah. Hey, let's enjoy it now, okay? We're off the road, we're never getting back on the road, so let's just enjoy where the journey went, because maybe it's more about the friends we made along the way than actually staying on topic.
As bad as that, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any? I've only got a few seconds. It's a serious question. I shouldn't squander it. Are there any Christian denominations you regard as false?
Certainly.
It's a serious question. I shouldn't squander it. I think you've successfully squandered all of your time so far, because I can't even point out a point of meaningful clash here that's even relevant to the debate topic.
Could I know what they are?
Well, I'm not a Calvinist, for example. I think that certain tenets of Reformed theology are incorrect. I would be more in the Wesleyan camp myself. But these are differences among brethren. These are not differences on which we need to put one another in some sort of a cage. So within the Christian camp, there's a large diversity of perspectives. I'm sure there are views that I hold that are probably false. But I'm trying my best to get my theology straight, trying to do the best job. But I think all of us would recognize that none of us agree on every point of Christian doctrine, on every dot and tittle.
Before Mr. Hitchens succeeds in launching another series of religious wars among Christians, let's get to the...
All right, we'll end it right there. Okay, there's my thoughts on that. Welcome back, guys, with my welcome back episode. I know this is going to maybe irk some people. Guys, I'm trying to be honest with you. I am not by any means trying to be disrespectful to atheists at all. I am trying to criticize what I think is disrespectful to atheists in someone who's clearly just there to waste everybody's time, because it's just not useful. Like if it was an argument on Jesus, fine. That would have been fine. Okay, lines of argumentation. If it was just a rhetorical session where we're trying to, see who has better prose, it would be fine. But it's a useless cross-examination. So I feel like it's a waste of time. I feel like that people who are on the fence about whether they should be Christians and atheists, and you would think that I would like this as a Christian who wants to convert more people to Christianity, or not Christianity, theism and atheism is what we're talking about. I got trapped in it. Now, for those people who are on the fence between atheism and theism, I think they'll watch that, and if they're actually learned people who can cut through rhetoric and look at points, they're going to trend to Craig's side of things. And that's mainly because Hitchens just doesn't provide really any meat, any real thing to look at. So you trend to Craig by default. So I would feel as an atheist, I would not like that. I'd feel cheated. I would want a better arguer up there who actually can provide serious clash so that people who are on the fence, may actually hear the best of both arguments. But that's just me. However, I am happy to be back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm jumping out of my chair. I'm so happy to be back. Happy to be back. If you guys are still here, if you've been faithful and committed and have subscribed to this channel throughout, comment in the comment section. Let me know that you've been here. And if you're excited that we're back, let me know that. If you want to recommend a debate, I'm happy to look at those. Recommend me a debate that you would like me to react to. Or if you just have comments, questions, concerns, put those down there. Be nice about it. Don't be a jerk, or you are out of here. But you can show frustration, just like I showed some frustration today. But I would say, ultimately, William Lane Craig, I'd give the advantage to him in that one. At least he kind of stayed on topic. Other than that, guys, Gen Z theology, we are out of here, but hopefully not as long as we have been out of here for the last hiatus we were on. See you next time, guys.